So back in 2011, my buddy Kevin built this beautiful custom chopper. Frame up, everything on it's based on a Harley Evo engine, built in with S&S top end, all sorts of fun gadgets, beautiful paint job, and became his pride and joy. Took it to a couple of shows, won some awards on it. Just extremely, extremely proud of this thing. Loves it to death. In fact, when I first met him, I said I was into motorcycles. He took me straight to this thing and showed me the Warhorse, which is her name. Beautiful motorcycle. Unfortunately, time happens, family happens, work, stuff around the house. You get tied up, and you get so tied up, and even your baby deteriorates. And that's the case that we have here. Sat under a porch out back, looked like it was probably protected from the weather, and next thing you know, you come down to it and realize, man, I haven't started this thing forever, and I'm starting to see rust and the paint's bubbling and a lot of little issues. Now, this bike is far from destroyed. It's still beautiful the way it sits, but we have a lot of little problems happening with it. For one, engine hasn't run in at least a year. I think he said he fired it up last year, but it sat for quite some time before that. We've got a little bit of dry rot on some of the belts, the tires, rust popping up on the exhaust. We don't know what that carb looks like. I know that before I went to pick it up, he told me that he just got the throttle unstuck, so that kind of concerns me what that carburetor is going to look like. So we got to dig into that. But really, it's just one of those things that happens. And Kevin, he's a great dude, good friend of mine, and I feel I owe it to him, especially as a fellow veteran and just an all-around great person, great dad, great husband. I want to see this thing get back on the street and ride down the road once again. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to bring Warhorse back to life. But before we get to turning, let's get to learning. The Evolution engine, usually referred to as the Evo and sometimes as the Blockhead, is an air-cooled V-twin engine manufactured from 1984 to 2000 by Harley-Davidson for the company's motorcycles. The Harley-Davidson Evolution engine powered a wide range of models from 1984 to 1999, including the Softail, Dynaglide, Touring, FXR, and Sports vehicles. The Evo remained in production until 2000, when the last Evo was placed in a production factory custom FXR 4. Approximately 1 million Evolution engines were manufactured at the Menominee Falls, Wisconsin factory known as Pilgrim Road Powertrain Operations Facility. Most consider the Evolution to be the engine that saved the Harley-Davidson company from bankruptcy. The Evo's engine success was crucial in Harley-Davidson's financial recovery, helping the company regain market share and investor confidence. Harley-Davidson's official name for the engine was likely related to the company's attempt to reform its image following the 1981 management buyout from previous owner American Machine and Foundry, also known as AMF. The Evo is widely regarded as one of the most reliable Harley-Davidson engines. The Evo replaced the shovelhead engine and brought major improvements in performance and longevity. Both the heads and cylinders of the Evolution engine are made from aluminum to reduce weight compared to the cast iron design. Air cooling efficiency is improved as aluminum is a far superior thermal conductor than cast iron. Using aluminum also resulted in less wear and tear on the head gasket seals, helping to make the engine much more durable than ever. The Evo also utilizes gear-driven camshafts, eliminating the need for chains and tensioners, which can be a source of potential issues. The engine's design allows for relatively easy access for maintenance, making it a popular choice for those who prefer to do their own work on their motorcycles. Due to its popularity and longevity, there's a large aftermarket for Evo parts, making it easier to find replacements when needed. Bottom line, the Harley-Davidson Evolution engine is a reliable powerhouse that played a pivotal role in revitalizing Harley-Davidson. Its improved durability and reduced maintenance requirements make it a solid choice for riders seeking a classic Harley with practical everyday usability. Even though newer engine platforms like the Twin Cam and Milwaukee 8 have been introduced, the Evo remains a popular choice for custom motorcycle builds and won't be disappearing anytime soon. Now I know what you're thinking. From back here, this bike looks like a beautiful piece of equipment. But it's not until you get up close to it you realize that, yeah, the signs of aging and neglect are there. And I don't mean neglect in a horrible, bad way. Just life. It happens. Let's remember that when we're looking at other people's things. You get down in here, you can start seeing the rust. Start seeing a lot of corrosion at the bars, and we got a lot of pitting, unfortunately, in this chrome. Beautiful chrome. We're going to see what we can bring back to life on that. I think a lot of it will polish out pretty well. I think we can save that. Things like the brakes, for example, all the fluid has come out. Beautiful braided lines. Hopefully we can save all those. I'm really banking on the fact that they're not all rotted out. Thinking just maybe the seals. So I know all the front brakes, front caliper has a lot of fluid on it, and I think it just kind of leaked out of there. So we're going to get into that and see if we can't seal the brakes back up. Come around here and you start to see just the corrosion, dirt up in these guys. Same problems with the clutch. The clutch clutches. So I don't think we lost anything there, which is good. Get down to the heads. We need a good shine up. We've got rust on the head bolts, so we're going to figure out how to clean that up. Over here on the gears. So, I mean, appearance-wise, just some good polishing, cleaning up, I think we'll be good there. And we'll do what we can to it. We're going to try and save some of this custom paint. Unfortunately, we began delaminating back here, and I can actually peel this corner up. So we're going to see if we can't do something about that to just save that and then re-clear over the corners. I don't know how we're going to do that yet. We're going to mess with it. But if I were to stick my fingernail in here and pop it out, this whole piece right here is delaminated. Really love to be able to save that. Ignition switch is just all seized, and we got to sort that piece out. Hopefully we can get that apart. He told me when I went to pick it up that he had just freed up the throttle cable. So that's good. It does move, but the fact that it was seized kind of concerns me about what that carburetor is going to look like. So not too big of a deal. We're going to get in and probably clean that up, polish up some other stuff, and see if she'll fire up. Got a lot of goodies bolted on there. I do believe the master cylinder for the rear brake has also leaked out. There's no rear brakes on it either. Not giving us any love there. So doesn't need a whole lot. I think some polishing. Go through the motor just a little bit, the carb. Change out the oil. I think we might be pretty good. We'll see what happens though. We'll go to fire it up and find out what it wants to actually do. Either way, I can't wait to hear this thing run. Get it rolling again. First thing we gotta do is get that battery out and put it on boil. So if you're like me and you can't remember what color sock to put on one foot to remember what color sock to put on the other foot, you're going to have a hard time keeping up on a project. So do yourself a favor, make a list, be professional about it, write it on a piece of cardboard, After all, what kind of shade tree mechanic are you if you don't have a piece of cardboard with a bunch of words written on it? Fix oil, tank, ignition switch, front, rear, brake, oil leak, primary carb, cast, paint, clean up chrome, replace crimps, replace oil lines. Just a couple things to do. We're going to get them all done, and I'm going to check them off one by one. Let's see what we got to do. All right, so I'm going to fix the oil tank paint. Got that ignition switch. It's all locked up. See if we can get that figured out. Front brakes, we got none. Rear brakes, we got none. We got to figure out what's going on with those. Oil leak off the primary. There's definitely fresh oil dripping down from something, so I think I got a bad seal in there. We're going to pull that car apart, clean it up. The paint around the gas cap, figure what we can do to fix that rust that's up there and hide that. Going to clean up all the chrome. We're going to replace all those crimp connectors and replace the oil lines are all dry rotted. So going through just messing with the electronics to see what we can get going here. Notice that the key is also stuck, so it doesn't want to turn at all. Try and get that apart and see what's going on with this ignition switch in here. I'd really like to keep that switch. I want to be really careful with this paint. This is the area that it's delaminating, so I'm a little concerned that that's going to come apart. It's the last thing I want to see happen. It's kind of wedged in there pretty good. Oh, well. Oh, what a bummer. Gotta figure out what to do with that. That is in there. All right, so I'm gonna have to loosen up the mount for the oil tank. We'll drop that down. I see how we did that. Okay. Lower that down so we can get the pressure off this. It's kind of pressed up against that. So it's kind of neat when you're working on something old like, or not old, but something that custom like this, is seeing how people did stuff, how they put it together outside of it being a factory. Well, that's just spinning the bolts, isn't it? And that's kind of cool because then, learn other people's techniques. There's more than one way to skin a cat, Ha! Oh, gotcha. All right. It just sucks to see that seized like that. I don't know. Maybe we put some schmutz down in there. Let's do that. I really want that switch to work again. Can't imagine that it's anything more than just corrosion. There we go. We'll let that hang out for a little while. And find something else to fix. Okay, so the first thing I like to look at on older motorcycles when I'm trying to get them going again is going to be the wiring. I like to go through it, check it out, see what kind of connections have been made, see what's been changed or repaired over the years. Now, Kev told me that he did have a wiring issue with this, burn up some wires, and he did some quick repairs. He got it back to running again. So we're going to go through that, find out what those were. He said they were just crimp connectors and some, quick kind of repairs that he's not really happy with. We're going to fix all those as we go through it. But the reason I like to start with the wiring is because I can get into the carbs and clean those and, find the oil leaks and find the fuel issue, delivery problems. But if the wiring's not right, I don't have power and it's not going to run. So I like to start there, make sure I have power to everything, and then check spark next. Once I got spark, then I start playing with fuel, go through the carburetor air, and pretty much anything else that goes along with that. So to start, we're going to start off with this ignition switch, if I could talk. This is one of those old barrel style keys. And I like these because they lock into place. Having it down here on the side like that with all that vibration, that key can jiggle out. These barrel styles keep it locked into place and you're really not going to lose it. However, this one's pretty tight, pretty seized up. I did spray it overnight with a little bit of PB Blaster, sprayed in through the different holes, and I'm actually able to get it to turn now, but it's still really tough. But the more I do it, the better it gets. We'll see if that frees it up more and more. However, I get back on here with an ohm meter, and I take my positive, negative, get in there with it on, and I got nothing. So it's probably so corroded in here that it's not making any contacts. Okay, I've got the ignition switch in the ultrasonic cleaner. See what we can do with that. While we're waiting, I just want to jump in here and see if there's something we can do about this corner. Because as I'm working on it, I don't want to mess this up. So do you see how it's delaminated? It's come off. The paint is still intact, but it has come off of the metal. So what I'm going to try and do is kind of tape this back, see if we can get in there and clean up the backing, and use some kind of maybe epoxy, something that won't eat through the paint, and we'll put it between that paint layer and that and get this stuck back down. But I got to kill any rust that's behind that. Now the paint is chipped here, messed up down here. I'm going to sand all that back, and I'm going to try and find a charcoal color and touch it up along the edges. And then what we'll do is we'll mix up some clear coat in the airbrush, auto clear, that should blend with this really well. And then we'll just hit the edges to try and seal it. I mean, it's worth a shot. When you have a custom job like this, I mean, that's one of those things, well, just do it right and repaint it. Well, you're not getting that easily again. So why not? Let's see what we can make out of it. Hopefully we can save it. All right, if you can see here, I've got a piece of just Scotch tape, something that won't stick too much. And I've peeled back, and I have it just attached over here so it can hold it up. I'm going to take maybe some 150. Let's get in here and see if we can't clean up this surface. I mean, that actually looks pretty good now. Here's what I'm thinking. I got a little JB Weld. Maybe get on a brush. Just get in between here. I swear I'm not the spokesperson for this stuff. In fact, quite the opposite. But when you need something to stick, I mean, I have used it before for that. There we go. Oh, now you want to stick on there really well. Because earlier, oh, there you go. You son of a... All right. Just maybe press it down in there. All right. Now, like with any adhesive and fiberglass, this is the same way. The amount of schmutz you have in there, you want enough to stick, but you want to get all the excess out, because the excess actually creates weakness. So you want to get all the You don't want a layer that's so thick in there. You want enough to make one side stick to the other. Ooh, 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 ooh. Almost done. Well, I've got bad news for you. I did everything I could. We're going to do it a little bit differently. A little bullet style connector so we can actually take the switch on and off in the future if need be for any reason without having to cut the wire. Better way to do that, I think. We got that battery back in there. We got the power up. Everything's looking good. Let's put that key on. Boom. I got tail lights, license plate lights, headlights, speedo light. Wiring is looking good. What do I have? Brakes? I got brake lights. I'm not going to crank the motor over yet. High beam, low beam, looking good. Horn. I'm deaf now. All right. Cool. All that fixed that. I've got about 4 or 5 little crimp-on terminal connectors that I'm going to pull out of there and replace with solder connectors, and that's really all I need to do with that. I have no other electrical issues. That's beautiful. Outstanding. I don't smell anything. Nothing's fizzing, sparking, or doing anything nasty. Electrical test complete. All right, what else we got on this list? Front brakes. We're gonna try and see if we can't get front brake because this is you doing something? It's not gonna get you a stoppie. So these are Harley Davidson style controls. Standardized front brake reservoir. Let's start by looking to see what's in there. Pretty simple here. Phillips head screws. Put them over here so I never see them again. All right. Hello? Nope, nothing in there. So it leaked out. Definitely looks like there's moisture down here on the brake. Yeah, looking good. There's a little bit of fresh oil. That looks good. The fluid looks good. .400. So I think it just leaked out. I don't think we're gonna have any issues up here, and it's no signs of moisture. Cables look clean all the way down. I think our problem is gonna be down at the caliper. All right, yep. Telltale sign that fluid's been leaking out. You see all that dust that's stuck to it? It wipes right off like that. Fluid residue has built up, leaking out of here. I'm going to put some fluid in it, build pressure, and we'll see if it doesn't squeak out anywhere. And then we know if it's inside the caliper, if it's just coming out of this line. And we can replace that line. Or replace the seals on it, which are probably two little brass or copper washers. One on each side of the banjo bolt. What kind of fluid does this take? .5. Oh. Why? Breaking the bank. Do I have some .5? I think I do. Yeah, I got .5. $400 a gallon stuff. .5. For all silicone brake systems, high quality formula does not absorb water. Good enough. All right. Joop, 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 joop. Boop. Won't put much in. Let's see if it leaks out. I can't afford to put any more of that in there. I don't know. Ooh, bubbles. Bubbles. Well, I tried the bleeding process for a while, but it's just not building any pressure. So something's definitely leaking in the caliper, which makes sense because that's why there's no fluid in it. But I was hoping maybe magic would happen. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this off, take a look at that really quick, and we'll see what we have. All right, so we got the caliper off. Without going too crazy nuts into depth on this, they're pretty simple. The style, I'm going to take the 4 bolts out of here. I've already loosened them up. It's going to separate. You have your guide pins. I'll be on one side, take both those out. And this is pretty nasty in here. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the seals for the pistons here gave up. A lot of dirt, a lot of grime in there. Remember how you take it apart, so when you go to put the new pads back in, you know, because they are different. So just notice how they are laid out. Take a picture of it. That's what I usually do. Actually, right here, just notice these 2 little O-rings. They're looking pretty bad. If you get in here, there's a lot of pitting in here. That is not good. I wonder if that's where we started leaking out at. That chrome delaminated inside here and is pitting up. And I bet you that it is not letting this make a seal anymore. Try and get up here so you can see it. I'm not sure. Right around this, you see all the chrome is all pitted, and there's a big chunk of it right there that's just missing. And I think that's where all the fluid started coming out, because that is the passage. There's an O-ring that goes in here, and it's the passage between the 2 connections. Puts the pressure through both sides. And that is just completely rotten over here right now. Okay, well, moving on. See what we can do about it. Real unfortunate part is this tank. The old seal went bad, moisture got in there, and we got some rust in here. I don't know how bad it is. I'm going to put the scope down in there and see what it looks like, but we definitely got bubbling up around here. I think what we're going to try and do is make some kind of flange that won't look too cheesy, you know, nice and clean. We can get rid of this rust, kill all that rust in there, but hopefully down in that tank, I mean, it's not bubbling out down here. We're going to pop the tank off and see what happens. Why? And cut. And cut it this time. And one more time. Okay. Ooh, there's water. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's water coming out of the crossover along. Check this out. I cut this crossover hose. This is a little dry rotted. I can get it off there, and that is just pure water. That is not even fuel. Yep. And it's been coming out for a minute, and there's rust. Hey, Kevin, your bike's really cool. This should be pretty easy. I'll get it going again for you. Nah, it's worth it. Just kidding. You just get off of there. I'm telling you to do something. Lord Almighty. All right, you are coming off. You're coming off there now. Yes. I stopped asking 5 minutes ago. Okay, razor blade time too. What did I do with it? I just used it. I was like, hey, look, cutting things. Oh, I put it away. Why would I do that? Moisture has been released. Can we get this off now? Or is there going to be another surprise for me? Another surprise? What's okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so what? Got the tank off. Got it outside, shaking it out. Motorcycle tanks suck trying to get all the fluid out. I know. It's a pain in the butt. But we got it outside. I sprayed some navel jelly down in here. If you don't know what that is, the modern day equivalent is that Rust-Oleum gel. Basically, it's just a rust remover. It's going to go in there. It's going to kill all that rust. Let's spray it down in here. Hopefully we can just kill everything that's on this. Now, it is an acid. So after it sits in here for a little bit, probably about 10-15 minutes, we're going to want to rinse it out. All right, we got the tank back just resting on the bike because I don't really have a place to set it to make sure the paint doesn't get scuffed up. Looks like we killed all that rust down in there. Looks pretty good. Turns into kind of a little black primer. I guess I don't really know what I'm going to do with that. I'm really hoping it doesn't flare back up and rust, but it kind of killed it out. But you see the rust that happened around the edge of the tank brim here. We're going to cut that out, kill it, and see if we can't maybe print a little flange that can go over that and hide the damage, so that way we don't have to try and repaint the tank. It's worth a shot. See what we can do. So I was thinking of making this little flange that can sit down inside the old hole, and then the cap would go down in the middle of it. So created just kind of a little ring. Gonna sit down in there like that. Boom. Now we'll come back. We gotta cut all that rust out, kill it, seal the edge of that, and put this down in there. We're also gonna sand this down and clean this up. Probably paint it the same charcoal. I think it's an easy fix. We'll smooth it out. It'll look good. Why not? Better than repainting the whole tank, right? All right, let's back this horse out and give her a bath. one unfortunate thing about having all this chrome is cleaning it. I know we haven't fired this thing up yet, but got a ton of chrome. I've got things sauteing, simmering, cooking, glazing, hanging out over here, doing stuff. I want to stay focused and busy, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. I want to get this puppy all cleaned up. We washed her down, got all the nasty stuff off of there, so let's polish it up. That's going to make a big difference. All right, so I mentioned earlier some of the wiring that I wanted to fix. It's nothing insane on here, but things like the brake switch have some crimp-on connectors that are cracked and broken, falling apart. I want to show you how I solder things, how I make my connections. Sometimes I even use the crimp-on connectors, but then I pull off the blue, yellow, red plastic on them, and I solder it together, and then I use heat shrink to go all the way up over the connector. I like doing that better. I think that it gives it a better finished look, a little bit more of a professional look. And in the long run, the crimp is not going to come loose. You know, the solder is not going to come loose like a crimp would. So we'll jump in here. I will just want to show you a couple of those things really quick. I won't bore you with all of it, but I'll show you one and how I do it, and then we'll jump on the rest of the bike. So this is a hydraulic line. It is actually the brake line for the rear brake caliper. Attached to that is this little pressure switch. And basically how this works is when you apply the pressure in the hydraulic fluid, when the switch senses the pressure, it closes the switch and it activates your rear brake light. So pretty common on a lot of older cars as well. So when you see things like that, that's what that is. Pretty simple. What I want to do is not super happy with that, how that's routed under the frame. So I think we're going to try and reroute it over the frame. That way, if you scrape on the bottom, you don't rip up your brake line. And then we're going to go ahead and change out these blue crimp style connectors for some solder connectors and see if we can just clean that up and make it look a little better. Take a look at these are the connectors that were on there. Crimped on, not that big of a deal, but I'm not a huge fan of these. You know, the edges are open, just kind of flopping around. I want to keep weather out of that. It's for the brake lights, so let's make sure that it is just bulletproof. Okay, so here's my method. Nothing crazy, but I don't like these. I've already said that, right? I'm going to gank these off of here. I just cut it back a little bit more just so I can save as much material. Remember, you can always cut more off. You can never add more. Well, I mean, in wiring you can. You just have to keep soldering more wire on. But that's called a pain in the butt. Okay, so with the type of circuit that this is, you have that pressure switch. That is a NO switch. That is a normally open switch. meaning that in its resting state, it's not connecting anything. When it receives the pressure, it's essentially taking these two wires and making them connect. So you have a hot end, a voltage on one end, and then you have your load side. So this is going to your lights to activate them, and this is going to be battery power or switched power. That's all that does. So it's normally open is what you would call that. Switch feels pressure, activates, makes the connection. It's like a momentary button switch, essentially. So that when you talk about bikes like a horn, doing the exact same thing. Closing it to make power. Pretty simple. I think I've over-explained that. Let's take these, make sure they're cleaned up. Get yourself a good pair of wire strippers. I mean, these are just cheap True Value style ones, but they work really well. I've had them for quite a few years. One thing you want to stay away from, and we're all guilty of it, is using a lighter or flame to melt the end of the wire to strip it. For one, it doesn't look as clean, and then you dirty up your wire if you're going for that professional look. Also, you melt the insulation around here, and you create a gap, allowing moisture to be able to get in there. As much as you think that doesn't matter, I believe you me, it does. Then I will add my heat shrink. Heat shrink just gives you a really, really finished look, and it protects your solder. And you can use it to color code, which in this case I don't have a negative, but if I was doing a switch that had a positive and a negative, something that went to ground, I could use black heat shrink for one side, red for the other. Hey, guess what? These are both power, so why don't we use red for both? Biggity boom. Remember to slide it on first. A lot of these terminals, I might be able to get it over, but if you forget to put your heat shrink on and then you try and do it afterwards, it's not going to work out very well for you. A lot of times I will get these blue connectors. Now, you probably can't see the shade, but I will tell you that when I find the ones with the real light blue on the end, they are usually a more poor quality than the ones that are a nice dark blue with a heavier plastic on them. I don't like using the plastic on them, so all I do is pop that off. What I'm left is a nice little terminal. Pop both those off, put them right on here, and then crimp them down. So what I do is I like to use this style crimper. Just kind of smush it into place so it locks on. And then what I'm going to do is finish that off by soldering the terminal to the wire. Then I know I'm going to have a nice, good connection. I like to leave a little bit of a gap. I know this is probably hard for you to see. I'm just trying to show you the best I can. I like to leave a little bit of gap between the insulation of the wire, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and the terminal itself. And that is to allow solder to flow down in there and ensure you get a nice solid connection. Because I've seen people solder connections like this, or connectors like this, and they get the solder all over the outside of the connector, but nothing on the inside, and the wire just pops right back out. Good rosin core solder, nice to have, works well. Hopefully this is hot enough. All right, boom. So we're melting on. Soldering is pretty simple, but there's techniques to it to make it work better so you don't get globs and nasty all over the place. But solder is sometimes tricky to work with. You got to remember that it will melt against itself. So if you just continuously to try and place cold solder on fresh metal, it generally doesn't work. What you want to do is feed it in to where you've already melted and let it flow into all the different spaces. Then we get a nice solid flow, nice solid fill inside, and boom, beautiful connection right there. Do the same thing for the other side. And now those terminals, I promise you, have a nice, good, solid connection. I like to leave the iron on just for a second to make sure it flows down in there. When you see globbing or it no longer wants to melt or it's not building up, make sure you know you have rosin core solder because that's what's going to help that flow and it stick. Also, make sure that your soldering iron is getting hot enough. Some of these, this is actually an old cheap one, but it's been working well for me. Sometimes they just don't get as hot, or you're too dirty up here in the tip end, and you're not going to get that good heat transfer. And then you're just sitting there trying to half melt solder onto these connectors, and it doesn't work out well in the long run. All right, next step. I like to let it cool for just a second. That way I don't pre-shrink my solder. On the female end connectors, I like to bring it up if I have big enough heat shrink, which this is just about the right size. All right, get it up there about maybe halfway up the terminal. I don't like to cover the terminal completely because it is not a complete waterproof seal, and this is on a vehicle that's floating around. And what can happen is if I move this and completely cover this terminal, moisture will get up in there, and this won't be able to dry. And then you'll get corrosion between the contact, the male terminal, and your female terminal. So leaving that open will help it just kind of dry out any weather that gets in there, any moisture. And then your next step is take a heat gun. And I like to use a heat gun now that I'm grown up, but I will tell you what, I have used a lighter a lot. I'm guilty of that as well. But again, it doesn't give you quite a finished look, and oftentimes it does turn the heat shrink black. So if you're not using black heat shrink, you're going to notice it and it looks all burnt and kind of trashy. So you want that clean look, get a heat gun or use a heat gun, borrow one, whatever you got to do. Okay, now remember, like I said before, this is just a basic switch. Normally open, closes to connect these two posts. So we'll run this down here. And unless you are concerned about routing and wires, they're both coming off the same area. It does not matter which end you hook what side to, because all it does is close. All right, I use some zip ties to mount this over here, but I'd like to maybe make a little mount for this. Just make it a little cleaner and hold it in place a little bit better. But for now, that should do. You know what? No, let's wrap it around. And this is the part where you can get extremely meticulous. Wiring, when it's done right, I will tell you right there, is a show winner. When you put that extra time in your bike, or any project that it really is, and you do the wiring and finish it off properly and route it nicely instead of it just being kind of hanging all over the place, I promise you, people notice that. All right, and there we go. Pulled the loom back down. I think it looks, pretty decently nice and finished. I think later we'll go through this and see if we can't line the wiring up better and figure out a different way to clamp it. I want to come up maybe in 3D print something that'll crimp the wires, give it a better look. But there you go, better than those blue ugly terminal ends hanging off the back, and it's going to last a lot longer. And then while I was down here, I noticed fresh oil once again on the floor. I had dried that up once, and I wiped down the frame. If you look here, there's the frame rail, and it comes all the way up to right there. If you notice back here, there's nothing that can be leaking from it. First, I thought it was brake fluid when I saw that pile back here, but now that I see it's doing that. Well, earlier on, I did clean up this area right here. It was covered in just kind of grime stuck to it. Another telltale sign about that's where your leak is going to be. and made it nice and clean. Now you get in here and I see nice fresh drips right there. So I'm thinking we probably have some kind of leak on the main rear, on the main seal here. We'll pull that apart and see what we can find. All right, well, so far, you see me mess with some of the easy little things, clean it up, polish it up, wipe stuff down, fix a little thing here, fix a little thing there. Now it's time to earn the paycheck. We've got a pretty nasty oil leak coming out of this main seal. Relatively positive it's the main seal, but you look for those little indicators. Moisture, oil, stains, obviously, where it's dripping from, but all that dust that collects on it, so it's been run like that before. It probably started seeping a while back when he was driving it. Never really noticed it. A bike sits low enough that it's really hard to tell it. Until it sits for a while, you start to develop these puddles. Now I have cleaned up several significant oil puddles on the ground. And when I say puddles, I mean legit, not just soaked into my concrete. I had good standing oil, which means a lot of oil is coming out of this, and I don't want to drive it like that. If it was just a little tiny seeping here and there, I'd maybe try and fire it and run it and see if the seal would come back around. But with that amount on the ground, that tells me that we have a pretty bad problem, and that seal is probably dry rotted out. Unfortunately, it's going to be hidden all the way back here on the other side of this motor plate. Now, if you're not too familiar with Harleys or engines or motorcycles where they have a separate engine and transmission, it's going to be a different setup than your standard, the Kawasaki we were working on last time, or the Viragos, or everything where you have a transmission that is actually built into the whole motor block assembly. This has your engine, your block. You're going to have your main shaft that works off of a drive belt and goes back to a detached transmission back here. Now this is an aftermarket Ultima 6-speed transmission. Really nice setup. What we're going to do is get into this. The clutches right here. Your primary drive, primary belt, that's got to come off. We're going to have to take the clutch off, take your primary pulley out, get back to this motor plate and pull that apart. This being all aftermarket, it's kind of hard to figure out torque specs, so I'm going to look at certain ones off Harleys. I'm going to have to kind of piece it together as we go to put it back together. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to that piece. But for now, let's start breaking this thing down, and hopefully we don't break anything. Now, before you get too crazy throwing an impact on these bolts and everything that's around here and just start blasting them all out, you got to remember that Harleys love Loctite. So we've got aluminum components, steel bolts, and most likely red Loctite on a lot of these bolts. I highly recommend getting here with a wrench first and breaking them loose and making sure that we're not stripping out any aluminum components or just blasting into these bolts and screwing them up. Is it always necessary? No. Are we guilty of doing what I said earlier and just getting on there with an impact and having at it? We've all done it. But if I'm going to sit here and show you how to do it, let's at least show you how to do it right? So break them free, make sure nothing sees. Those all felt really good. Let's see how tight that one is. All right, good. And there's nothing wrong with you taking your time. Again, when you're dealing with aftermarket components like this, you're most likely, especially when you're working on something that somebody else did, not going to have the manuals, not going to have the torque specs. Take your time when taking it apart so you don't miss anything dumb and end up ruining something, and then you have to buy all new components and start from scratch. There we go. Look at all that. That's what it looks like apart. Well, now we got to put all that back together. Oh, that's what sucks. But okay, cool. All right, I'll dive into the rest. It's getting kind of late. Look at all that water. That came out. It's water. So wet water, wet water, as opposed to dry water, was in there. We'll clean all that up. See what I can figure out. I don't know yet. But the transmission is fine. Okay, got that wiped up. Let's see what is hiding in here. Oh, that is wet and magnetic. Oh, that was a lot of water. Look at that all dripping out. I don't know if you can see it on the bottom here. Lots of water coming out of there. Why? Ooh. Well, milky, nasty. So, next up, take the stator out. It just keeps going. I knew what I was getting into. I don't know what I'm saying. See all that oil pouring all over the floor. Here, let me come over here. So this is the connector for the stator. And I do believe that it is leaking oil like a sieve. Well, why don't we just go ahead and let that finish soaking into my concrete? Because that explains, let's bring you over here now. I'm going to do it in this like professional panning manner where it's nice and smooth. Boop. Look at all that. So that plug comes through here like that, and then this plug's on the outside of it. So all that oil is also leaking out over here. Okay, so it got a little late last night, but before I packed it in for the evening, I threw the 2 screws back here with the clamp. I sprayed cleaner all around, got everything nice and dried out, just to confirm that I'm not leaking out of this output shaft seal, and that my issue is purely these screws. And look at it. It's pretty clear as day. Everything around this is bone dry all the way around. I've got this nice oil path coming straight out of these 2 screws with a big pool of oil. Boom, right there in the bottom. We got lucky, boys. Now let's get that sealed up and back together. Before we do, I'm going to drain out the rest of the oil over there so we can get rid of all this residual sitting here. Allow that to seal properly. I'm probably going to goop that up and just let it sit. So normally on an Evo motor, what you'd want to do is fire up the engine, drive it around for a little bit, get some good heat in it, get some good oil pressure and flow before you drain out the oil to do the oil change. I mean, in this scenario, that was what I was going to do, but now that I've got to get some oil out of this block, I think we're going to go ahead and just drain out what we can, pump the rest through, get it out of that block to where it's overfilled, see if I can pump some of that out of there by cranking the motor. And then when I go to add it back up, we'll drive it around on the test drive, we'll warm it all up, and then I'll go ahead and do an actual oil change on it where we replace the filter and all that jazz. I'm also going to be getting in here and replacing some of these dry rotted lines. I got a new line for that. So we'll get that taken care of, and maybe I'll probably go ahead and do that at this point before we put oil back in. But here's your oil tank right here. So I'm going to take the lowest point. There's several hoses that you can feed off of. This one goes down in the block. This feeds the oil pump. And you notice this is on the lowest angle. So the most oil is going to be here. So I'm going to drain it from this location. There is a plug, if you get up in here, this one specifically, because this is an aftermarket tank. There's a plug right here where I can drain the oil. But that is going to make a massive mess spilling oil all over everything. So I am going to unhook this line, this hose, where it goes into the block down here. We'll drain into a pan right from there. All right, while we got the engine plate off, I found some wiring back here. This is to some, you get some underglow lighting. A couple zip ties on there. I snapped them off and pulled them up, and then they were just a, kind of a bundle of wires that were down in here. So I went ahead and cut those off. I figured, you know what? Let's go ahead and show you this too. Why not? Get it in there. The soldering here needs a little love, and I don't like those exposed wires. So I'm going to cut this up, clean it up, resolder everything. While this is all off, we're going to tuck it with a nice loom down in here and hide it so I don't have wires flopping all over the place. I think that'll look a little nicer. I think it'll be a nice surprise for Kev. I think he'll like that. So let's do it. Okay, so apparently this is a little key fob that works those lights that we just fixed a little bit. So we got a new battery for it. I was trying to mess with it earlier and nothing was happening. So I'm hoping that it's just, I couldn't see any lights blinking. I pulled it apart, took the battery out, moved it around a little bit, put it back in, and I pressed the button. I saw a little blue light for like a second. So I think the battery was just dead. Got a new battery in here. We'll pop that back together and let's see if all these little underglows will still work. Pretty interested in seeing that. I think it would be pretty neat. All right. Kind of excited for this. I don't know why, but it would look neat. I didn't know there was underglow on it, and that's pretty cool. So Okay, I've got 4 buttons to try. That was A, B, C, D. Nothing. Hold it. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Oh. Sidetracked. All right, cool. Guess what? We're fixing the underglow. Look, that's got to seep out of the case. And as you all know, I can't. There's no other easy way to let that. I'm just going to let the oil drip out of there. So while that's draining as much, it's gone down to only the lower hole. That's good. There's a lot of oil in this. It's kind of strange. All right, cool. Let it leak out. While that drips out, I'm going to figure out why this is not working. And we are going to get underglow back on this bike. All right, people, I've just officially proved that chrome saves you time and money. Look in there for a second. See that flashing? That is the reflection of the underglow onto the chrome valve cover. I started disconnecting the battery just to try and figure out what was going on and trace all the wiring for the lighting. And I started seeing this flashing over here off to the side. I kept seeing it and I thought I was going nuts. And then finally I caught it. So I have some bad connections up in here. We're going to go through these all, clean them up, make them pretty. This is the stuff you have to look at when a bike sits for a while. Wiring goes bad just sitting. Got to be careful. And to be honest, I'm not going to bore you with a whole nother wiring sequence, but I am going to go through all this, clean it up, take a look at it now, and in a few moments, it's going to magically be better. All right, now remember, I didn't say perfect. I said better. And they are. They are much better. It's going to require me to rewire almost the entire bike to get less wiring in there. And we're not doing that. I got something in store. In here and clean up. Wipe everything down since we have all that oil and dirt everywhere, right? Schmutz. I've got the bike just jacked up a little bit over, kind of leaning off to its side to keep whatever residual oil's in there flowing that way. Because I really do want to keep those 2 screw holes nice and dry while I get this put in. And something makes a mess. It just makes a mess. You get in there. Go. What in the world? Well, as I live and breathe. Yep. Boom. Awesome. All right. We will use Permatex thread sealant with Pitfi. With stuff in it. It's got something in it that makes it work better. Before I put the engine plate back on, we're going to clean that up. I'm going to fix this breather hose and tuck this wiring back a little bit more first. Let's knock that out really quick, and then we'll get the engine plate back on and start getting everything bolted back up. All right, a lot of these bolts and fittings, and nuts, and especially nuts here like this one for the primary, are all rusted out, nasty. I think we're gonna go. Let's go ahead and sandblast these down, clean them up, get these burrs off them, and then I think maybe we'll powder coat them. You know, those little cheapy Harbor Freight powder coaters. It works really well for doing stuff like this. And then we got the tank hardware. At the same time, I'm gonna go ahead and just blast all this stuff. It's all worn out looking. I'm gonna powder coat all that so it doesn't rust anymore. And I think that'll be pretty cool. So when you're restoring old stuff or just fixing it up and just trying to make it last, powder coat's the way to go. You can spray paint, you can do all that stuff. Yeah, it'll look nice for a little bit, but I promise you, on a motorcycle, especially when you got fuel dripping and leaks and all whatever happens on a bike that always seem to happen, spray paint never works. So my go-to is powder coating. A lot of cheap systems you can get out there. Powder coating is relatively easy to do these days. Electrostatic charge of the powder coming out of the gun, and then it's grounded. So whatever you put it on, I like to use a little, this is going to go into a small oven. A little garage's easy bake oven, right? So I make some little hooks, and just as long as everything is attached to the ground, we're good to go. So it's a pretty simple process. Get the little pedal, light comes on, neat. Test your spray, and then there you go. That charge, along with it being grounded, ensures a nice, even coat over your material, which is really what you want. And that noise you hear is just, that's the compressor. I have a small nailer, like a nailing gun compressor. I just made this little bench. It works well. It keeps the powder in there. It doesn't blow all over the place and make a big mess in the garage. Just be careful with the powder, because the powder does make a huge mess if you start touching it. It gets all over everything. So, something to be aware of. And just make sure you get a good coat all over it, nice even. Don't go too heavy, don't blast it. You just want it to be smooth. If you put too much on there, the finish will look like garbage. And it's just trial and error. Really, like anything else you're going to do at home. Trial and error. You can mess this up 10,000 times, and it'll still cost less than it does to take it down to somebody and do it. So, big fan of not paying somebody to do stuff. All right, then we're going to take this over, throw it in the oven. So for most small items, this will work perfectly. You got a little countertop oven. Bake it. I do 400 for about 15 minutes. Now you always got to look at what the powder coat calls for. This one, 415 minutes, I found works perfect for it. And we just let it do its thing. While that's cooking, we're going to throw the rest of the little stuff in the sandblaster, clean it all up. Again, just like paint, it's all about prep. That's why I like to blast it first, a little media blast on it, clean it all up. We'll throw it on the powder coater. We're going to have a bunch of parts that are going to last a lifetime. All right, so there you have it. Some nicely powder-coated hardware that should hold up to the test of time. So we'll mount the gas tank back on with that. And let's move on to checking out this clutch. This was an unforeseen issue. Really didn't think anything of it. But this is what we call a dry clutch. So a lot of motorcycles today, the modern one all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a wet clutch is really what you see a lot. This is an open belt, open drive setup, has a dry clutch on it. Unfortunately, a lot of moisture got in there over the years, and this is one of those things that, hey, as awesome as the bike looked, we didn't realize that this was going to be a huge issue. Well, unfortunately, that's going to be about all the time we have for this episode. I got some parts I got to order. We got a new clutch pack on the way for a new front caliper. I just couldn't bring that old one back around. We got a couple things to do on this bike yet. The carburetor, fuel system, make sure we're squared away there. I got some oil lines to replace. We can take care of that. Got the new chrome oil filter on the way. Once we get that in, we're going to go ahead and fire this puppy up, hopefully, and take it for a little ride. I'm excited. I know Kev's excited, and I hope you're excited too. Please, if you like what you see, like and subscribe. I can't do it without you. Tell me what you want to see down below. We're going to keep working on this. I'm going to keep building this show as much as I can. I appreciate all you guys. So remember, until next time, keep it on two wheels. But whatever you do, don't tell Shan. But before we finish up this episode, I'd like to leave you with one last surprise.